And I've been kind of reflecting on the past 3.5 weeks or so, while also kind of trying to map out the next 5 days or so. And I feel like in my mind, I have sort of failed. Hello everybody and welcome back to Dollar Tree Dinners, and welcome to what I believe is episode 6 of a series where I'm attempting to stretch $100 to buy my groceries for an entire month. This is going to encompass days 19 through 25, and it may be the last episode of this series, but if you stick around until the end, I'll kind of talk about my thoughts, what I have left, and then you guys can weigh in on what you want me to do next. Spoilers, yeah, I am out of money, and there was a little bit of a shift when I ran out of money. I think that up until this point, I didn't really have any like choice paralysis or anything like that. But as soon as I was down to like my last $10 to $12, that's when the choices got really hard. Technically speaking, I do have enough food to last me 30 days, but I want you guys' input. So stick around until the end. We'll discuss what all I have left and my tentative kind of meal plan for the next 5 to 6 days. And then I have some options for you guys, and I would love your input on what you would like to see next in this series. Without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right in. Good morning. Today is day 19, and I am gonna start off my morning the same way as yesterday. We're gonna do some frozen banana with oatmeal and peanut butter. This is straight out of the freezer, so as you can see, the frozen banana is still soft enough to cut through even when it's frozen. And this is my final packet of maple brown sugar oatmeal. So after today, we're gonna have to switch to a different breakfast. I did go ahead and take out the potato, sausage, and onion mixture that was in my freezer, and it is in the fridge thawing. I'm not entirely sure whether I'm going to use that to make another batch of breakfast burritos or whether I'm gonna make something different with it, because I have had a lot of people suggest things like breakfast casseroles or quiches, so maybe that'll be in the works. My peanut butter jar is almost empty as well. I can maybe get one more serving out of that if I scrape it all the way down. So definitely an easy and quick breakfast. This one's been kind of a go-to one for me the past couple weeks, mostly as a filler breakfast in between. Because I'm adding the peanut butter and the frozen banana to it, it's giving me ways that I actually enjoy eating oatmeal. For lunch today, I'm gonna be having a full bowl of my leftover vegetable soup. I did go ahead and freeze the other one. This is not the ideal way to do it. It's just how I did it because I didn't really feel like putting it in a freezer bag. And I also froze my last jar of stock. So this is 2 cups of stock, and I always leave enough headspace that I can freeze it directly in the jar. Because this is so dense, it's probably gonna take a little while to thaw. I'll have to plan like at least 2 days in advance before I put that in the fridge, but I did go ahead and freeze the other half of the soup and the last 2 cups of stock. So that makes for a really simple couple of first meals, and I'm not sure what I'm gonna be doing for dinner tonight, or whether I'm gonna be going to the store or trying to work with some things that I already have. Maybe I can work with some things I already have. So the soup looks like pretty good. Didn't like thicken up too much after being in the fridge. Again, this is a 32-ounce container. This is about half of it, and I'm just gonna reheat that in the microwave. For anyone wondering, the soup is better the next day. I don't have any pasta. I don't have any potatoes. I have some flour and some rice as like a base or like a carb. The only like raw meat that I have is the chicken. Of course, I still have the pork loin. Maybe we could do like a pork fried rice, except I don't have any soy sauce or mixed vegetables. So I'm trying to think, do I want to go to the store and maybe get a couple of ingredients? I don't necessarily want to spend the whole $12 that I have left, but I also don't really quite know what I want to do for dinner tonight. So I was kind of brainstorming, looking through the fridge and the freezer. I did take out the chicken when I made the chicken sandwiches. I had cubed up some chicken. I stuck that in the freezer. So I have thawed that. And I was thinking what I could potentially make with that. I know I have some lettuce to use up. A lot of times the meals are kind of dependent on what kinds of flavors that I have to actually work with. So I was thinking I could make some barbecue chicken wraps. The only thing is that I don't have much left in this bag of flour. I definitely don't have enough to make a full batch of tortillas. So I went through and wrote out my recipe for a full batch of tortillas, and I have cut it into a third. So it should make 2 large tortillas so that I have dinner potentially for tonight. So I'm gonna attempt to cut my tortilla recipe by a third. So based on my calculations, I should need about a half cup of flour. And I'm still gonna save a little bit of flour. I need some for rolling the tortillas, but I also want some for breading the chicken. Now I'm gonna go in with about a 1/4 teaspoon of salt and 1.5 tablespoons of oil. And now hopefully my calculations are correct. I should need about 2.5 tablespoons of boiling water, but I'm gonna start with 2 and add the extra half if I need to. That actually looks pretty good with just 2. So let's see, let's turn that out. It's such a small batch. It's kind of, it's so tiny. Need a tiny little batch of flour tortillas. In the meantime, I'm gonna go ahead and prep the chicken as well. And I'm just gonna do a basic flour dredge just to give it some texture. So let's just season the chicken a bit with some salt and a little bit of that garlic and herb. Not much because I don't want to conflict with the barbecue sauce. And a little bit of flour, maybe like a tablespoon or 2. Should be just enough to kind of coat the chicken. Needs a little bit more. And just trying to make sure I save enough flour to roll out my tortillas. So once again, I'm going to be working in a small skillet in batches so that I can use less oil. So I'm going to go ahead and fry up my little chicken pieces in probably about 2 batches. So I feel like it looked a little washed out over by the stove, but this is what my chicken looks like after it was all breaded and fried, and it looks really good. This looks like chicken nuggets from Chick-fil-A, and it was only breaded in flour and some seasoning. So you don't necessarily need to double bread things if you don't want to. If all you have is flour, that works as well. And the last thing I want to do is grate some cheese to go on these wraps. I'll probably use, I kind of halfway grated that one, so I'll finish that one off and leave the other 5 ounces untouched. My tortillas are a lot more abstract this go around, but they're a little drier too. So the recipe didn't quite scale down super well, but they should work just fine for dinner tonight. I'm gonna go down with some shredded lettuce, some of my fried chicken pieces, barbecue sauce, and then I'm just gonna grate some cheese directly over top. So this one's cracking a little bit. That's what I was saying. It's a little drier, not quite as soft. It's not really holding its form super well. Let's do the same with this other one. Wrap it up however you need to. Again, these tortillas are a little crumbly, but let's cut one open and see what the inside looks like. That is our barbecue chicken wrap for day 19. So tortilla issues aside, this is actually really fantastic. I think that breading the chicken was such a good call. I think that this tastes like I got it from a fast food place. I don't even know how to explain it. I love barbecue chicken wraps. They're one of my favorite things. The way that I usually make them, I'll tell you the non-budget way that I make them. So usually I do a breaded chicken like this, shredded lettuce, barbecue sauce, cheese, everything you see here. I usually do store-bought tortillas because it just makes it easier. And the only other things that I add to it are ranch, diced tomatoes, and some fried onions or fried jalapenos. Even without those like additions that I usually include on them, these are fantastic. So that did for the most part deplete this entire bag of flour. And next time I'll definitely buy a 5-pound bag as opposed to a 2-pound bag so that I don't have to worry about prematurely running out of something, especially when it's as versatile and shelf stable as flour. Because aside from being able to save money by making things like my own flour tortillas, I also have felt like being able to bread and fry things like making the country fried steak, the chicken sandwiches, and now the barbecue chicken wraps has significantly elevated the meals to a point where they don't feel like budget meals. I feel like I should experiment a little bit with scaling down the tortilla recipe. Everything looked great with the tortillas up until I added the water, and I really should have gone ahead and used my calculations, which was 2.5 tablespoons. I started with just 2, but I think that because I didn't add the full amount of water is why these are so dry and crumbly. Just for fun, I tested the tortilla recipe a second time. I wanted to see if that extra half tablespoon of water that I didn't add made that much of a difference in the final recipe. And this is my second batch, and as you can see, these ones are not as crumbly as the first batch. They're nice and flexible, so that extra half tablespoon of water did make a huge difference in the final product. Good morning and welcome to day 20. So as I mentioned yesterday, I took out this filling to thaw. This is the sausage, potatoes, and onions that I used to make breakfast burritos. And unfortunately, I don't have flour, so I can't make another batch of breakfast burritos, which got me thinking, what else could I potentially do with this filling? And then I was also thinking about the fact that I had some bread ends in my freezer. So these were from making the Uncrustables. They're all of the crusts. So instead of making another batch of breakfast burritos, which I can't, we're gonna make a breakfast casserole instead. Start with the bread. So again, I took this out of my freezer and I let it thaw. I just kind of shoved it all in the bag because I knew whatever I ended up using it for, I was going to have to cut it up anyways. Some of you may call this breakfast casserole, some of you may call it a strata, and some of you may call it something like a savory bread pudding. There are a lot of different names for this variation of a breakfast, but it mostly is just a way to use up stale bread. My bread isn't necessarily stale, but actually I'm like, ooh, that's gonna be full. That's fine. So there is my sausage, potato, and onion mixture, which I'm just gonna layer right on top of all of the bread. There is a tiny bit of egg already in here because I had some leftover burrito filling that through in the bag as well. Now, as far as eggs go, I have 8 eggs left. I don't want to use all 8, so I'm probably gonna just use 6. Also, don't have any milk. It's really common to add milk into a recipe like this, but I don't have any, so I'm just gonna use water in place of milk. Hoping that 6 eggs is enough, but I don't want to use all 8. Water, I'm going to do about a 1/4 cup. Just going to pour that directly on top of the egg, sausage, potato, or sorry, the bread, sausage, potato, and onion mixture. Let that kind of sink down into the bottom. And then of course we can't forget cheese. Let's grate up 1 ounce of cheese to go on top. It's not a ton of cheese, but it'll at least add some flavor and a little bit of color on the top as this bakes. That's gonna be baked at 350 for about 30 to 35 minutes. So that is after 30 minutes and this smells so good. It looks really good. I'm actually really happy that it's not super eggy. Like the egg is really just kind of holding everything together, but it's not like there's no visible egg on top. I'm sure that it all kind of sunk to the bottom. But I'm gonna let this cool for a minute and then I'm gonna slice into it. And now I have breakfast for today and for the next 3 days as well. Now let's give it a try. I'm so excited. I think this is gonna be really good. I hope it is. I mean, how can you go wrong with potatoes and eggs and sausage? And I already know what the filling tastes like because I already had the breakfast burritos. This is another meal that I made almost entirely from scraps. It does have a bit of a residual sweetness. I don't know if some of the bread had some peanut butter and jelly on it from when I made the Uncrustables. It's definitely possible. Or the sweetness could just be coming from like the onions being slightly caramelized. The sausage sometimes has a bit of a sweet flavor. I don't know what it is, but there is a little hint of sweetness. And the bread becomes almost sponge-like. I don't want that to be a deterrent. It's not bad in any way. I just want to mention that the bread has a completely different texture when it's cooked like this. It's more like French toast, you know? That when you go to bite into French toast, how it's very soft and spongy, and this is similar to that. This could also be a really great breakfast option in place of the bread. I bet you could do some frozen pancakes or frozen waffles or something like that. If you wanted more of like a McGriddle feel to your morning, little sweet, little savory. So swap out the bread with whatever you have on hand. Frozen pancakes or waffles would probably be great. Even if you have like a pack of flour tortillas and you want to cut those into pieces, it'll be like a deconstructed breakfast burrito in a casserole form, which is something I've thought about doing. is doing a breakfast burrito casserole with like cut up bits of tortilla mixed into like sausage, egg, and cheese. But there is my breakfast for the next 3 days already sorted. So for lunch today, I'm gonna be finishing off the last of my vegetable soup. Cabbage, potatoes, tomatoes, onions, carrots, celery, rice, broth. I made it in the previous episode. If you're curious, you can go back and watch that. But this is my last serving beyond the one that has been frozen. So that'll be my lunch for today. So today is day 20, which means that there are still 10 days left and I have $12 and some change. I am going to make probably what is the final grocery store trip for the entire month. And hopefully I can make this $12 last me the entire last 10 days along with everything I have in my freezer. How I allocate this last $12 is extremely important in making sure that I have enough food to get me through the next 10 days. So on day 20 of 30, I am officially out of money. I have $1 and some change left. It's over $1.25. So if I needed to buy one more thing at Dollar Tree, I potentially could, but otherwise the entire $100 has been spent. Overall, I feel like I have allocated the funds fairly well. I know that there are always better choices that I could have made, and I definitely never feel like I am perfect at this, and I'm sure nobody ever feels like they're perfect when they're working with such a strict budget and trying not to just eat things like beans and rice. But I digress. The money is spent. Let me show you how we spent the last $12. So egg prices were back up on the rise. I only have a couple of eggs left, but I can't afford them. It was $3 for a dozen or over $4 for an 18 pack. Sales usually cycle every 3 to 6 weeks or so. Potatoes were back on sale for $1.99, so I was able to get a 5-pound bag of potatoes. And I just wanted to show that this salsa that I got for $1.89 in the first week is now on closeout for 96 cents, so it's even cheaper now. I have been eyeballing these Fiesta beans, which are on clearance for 90 cents. I figured that they are definitely worth a shot. I compare them with rice or potatoes. As far as meat, the only thing that was in my $3 range was this pack of pork chops for $3.27. And then at Dollar Tree, I got a bag of their frozen pepper and onion stir fry, another loaf of bread, another jar of peanut butter, and then I had one more item and I decided to get bologna. I was debating between bologna or hot dogs, but I did get the bologna. The only reason I was thinking about hot dogs was to potentially make Clara's poor man's meal. I am pretty depleted on vegetables. I have a can of green beans left. Now I have pepper and onion stir fry. I have vegetables in various cooked forms, like in my squirrel fund, I have some cooked meals, cabbage rolls. So I didn't particularly buy any vegetables this go around, but I think we have enough nutritious food kind of frozen, prepped, and ready to go. So let's go ahead and cook some dinner. And we're gonna be making pork chops for dinner tonight. I think I'm gonna only make 3 of them and I'm gonna freeze the other 3. I probably have just enough flour to bread the pork chops, but we've been breading a lot of things lately, so I'm just gonna season them up. We're gonna make some garlic and herb pork chops with the garlic and herb seasoning. So if you hear a noise in the background, that's just the microwave because I am baking the potatoes in the microwave, but I'm just gonna pan sear these pork chops for 2 to 3 minutes per side. They're very thin, so they don't take long to cook. So what I absolutely love about this dinner is that I was able to put this together in under 15 minutes because I just baked the potatoes in the microwave, which only takes 5 to 10 minutes or so. Fried up a pork chop. Those only took a few minutes. It looks kind of small and measly, but it's fine. And then I also just threw some green beans in the microwave. But all in all, on the plate in under 15 minutes. So, and I have this prepped now for the next few days because I did all 3 potatoes at one time in the microwave. I even have butter still from the first episode, which I haven't even touched this stick yet. That will change though, because I'm probably going to switch back to eating my grilled cheese sandwiches for lunches soon. But I can add some butter to my baked potato, as well as some salt and pepper. This is another one of the times where I like to show regular meals. It's not a recipe, it's not anything complicated, it's just a protein and some sides. A vegetable and a baked potato. Easy day. My pork chop is perfectly cooked. When you bake a potato in the microwave, the skin's not as good as like when you bake it in the oven. But summer, I'm not baking a potato in the oven for an hour. I really just like the taste of the potato with butter, salt, and pepper. Honestly, that was the perfect dinner, and I have absolutely nothing I would change about it next time. And I'm gonna be eating this for a couple of dinners. So I'm gonna pack up the rest of it in containers for the next couple of days. I'm so full, I have the hiccups now. I don't know, do you guys get the hiccups when you eat too much or eat too quickly? These pork chops are so small. I probably should have done 2, but meat's kind of the hardest thing to budget in. There is my pork chop meals for the next 2 dinners. So that's a wrap of day 20. And at this point, every day or every night, I'm gonna make sure I take something out of my freezer to thaw in my fridge for the next day, because I don't typically like to reheat things from their frozen state. I like to thaw them first. I find that they reheat better. So starting tomorrow, day 21, we're gonna start using up some things that we have set in the freezer. Good morning and welcome to day 21. Today we're gonna start off by seeing how well the Strata reheats. So that was 1.5 minutes. I think it's reheated fine. Let's give it a try and just see if the texture's right. I think that this Strata turned out fine. It's a lovely breakfast. It's not my favorite breakfast that I've made. Definitely, I would say that my favorite breakfast was actually the breakfast burritos. But I think this was a good use of the ingredients that I had. Maybe that I'm just hungry and it's breakfast time, but I think this tastes better today than it did yesterday. Like the texture's better too. It's strange because you wouldn't think it'd be good after having been baked and then microwaved, but I think it's actually better today. This will do just fine as my breakfast for the next 2 days. For my lunch today, I thawed out one of the burrito bowls that I had frozen. So I made 5, I ate 4, I froze 1. The only thing in this that's questionable is that it has fresh tomatoes in it, which I probably should have thought about before I froze it, but we're gonna reheat this and see how this turns out after being frozen for 2 weeks. And I'm actually gonna put it on a plate. I know it doesn't look the best. It's because the black beans were seasoned black beans. They kind of give the rice like a gray cast. But that's where we just cover it up with, salsa and stuff to make it look better. But I'm also gonna be adding some shredded lettuce because I have a little bit of shredded lettuce left over. So I can add that into the bowl as well. So I'm just gonna add some shredded lettuce on top of that just because I have some to use up. To add a nice crunch to it, and then I'll also add some of my poblano salsa, which is significantly cheaper today than it was when I bought it. So it looks like it's been marked down even further. If you did want to pick some up at my Food Line, it's like 90 cents now. That froze and reheated perfectly. The lettuce is a perfect addition to it too because it adds like a nice fresh crunch to it. But as far as the meal prep goes, this was probably the most substantial meal that I made because it's rice and beans and corn and things like that. And it cost me like $5 and some change to make it. So it's one of the cheapest meals that I made. It's one of the most filling meals that I've made. And being able to add lettuce to it only improved it. Hopefully the rest of the meals that I froze reheat as good as this. On day 23, I had another serving of my Strata for breakfast, and then for lunch, I went back to my grilled cheese sandwich with some of my leftover roasted vegetable soup. Again, I had frozen this, and I divided the roasted vegetable soup into 2 servings, so I had this 2 days in a row. As far as the grilled cheese, the only change that I made was instead of using butter on it, I ended up using my homemade mayonnaise. Then for dinner, I had my pork chop meal that I had prepped with the baked potato and the green beans. Day 23 is quite similar, starting off with the Strata, and then for lunch, again, I had a grilled cheese, roasted vegetable soup, and celery with peanut butter. Then for dinner, I had the country fried steak. So again, I thawed this, I reheated it. This one did not reheat super well. It tasted fine, but as you can see, it's a little liquidy. There's some just water on the plate. I suspect that is from the mashed potatoes. So now here we are going into day 24. I have 2 eggs left, and at this point I'm switching to having a fried bologna sandwich for breakfast. I've done this before. It's one of my favorite budget breakfasts. For lunch, I cooked up the rest of my rice, which was 1 cup of rice, and then I also had these Fiesta beans. I had some of the pepper and onion stir fry from Dollar Tree. I do still have some leftover cheese. We're kind of making a burrito bowl 2.0, but I did not like this burrito bowl as much as I liked the first burrito bowl, and these servings are a little bit smaller as well. I stretched it into 3 servings, but that was quite the stretch. Flavor-wise, I thought that these Fiesta beans were a little on the bland side, so I did add some of my poblano salsa to it, which kicked it up a notch, but this is, to me, the epitome of eating like rice and beans, and it tasted like eating rice and beans, unlike the first burrito bowl that I made. And then for dinner on the 25th day, I had my leftover cabbage rolls. There are 3 in here, but one of them is kind of small. I just reheated this in the microwave, and the cabbage rolls froze and reheated beautifully as well. So far the only meal that has not reheated really great was the country fried steak. So it's day 25. I'm eating my breakfast, which is the bologna and egg breakfast sandwich, and I've been kind of reflecting on the past 3.5 weeks or so, while also kind of trying to map out the next 5 days or so. And I feel like in my mind, I have sort of failed. It's a catch-22 though, because while I say that I failed, I also feel that I haven't, because the portions that I have shown throughout the series have been substantial. I want to be able to show that the meals don't have to be stingy, that they can be filling, that they can be homey. I have a lot of things that I really factor into these series whenever I do them. I haven't technically failed because I haven't finished the full 30 days yet, but in every scenario that I've kind of mapped out, I've run out of unique or dynamic meals, and I'm left with kind of bare bones essentials. One of the mistakes that I know that I made was thinking in terms of weeks instead of days. For example, I've been week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, but 4 weeks is only 28 days. So in my mind it was, I only have to make it 4 weeks, but really I needed to make an extra 2 to 3 days on top of those 4 weeks. And I did not consider that as I've been doing this. So I've been thinking in terms of weeks when I should have been thinking in terms of days. The other part is that I have sat here kind of thinking about, what food I have left. And I have good meals, but it's all a bunch of repeats and leftovers. From here, every conceivable breakfast, because I'm out of eggs, I do have some potatoes, and again, I could make a version of Clara's poor man's meal with bologna and have that as a breakfast option. But every conceivable breakfast from here forward would be some form of oatmeal. I have the 2 leftover oatmeal and banana bars, and then I have oatmeal, peanut butter. I still have some bananas in my freezer, and I have the canned peaches. So just various forms of oatmeal for the next 5 days. As far as lunches go, I have the beans and rice that I prepped yesterday, which is the pinto beans that I added the pepper and onion stir fry to. It's kind of boring, it's kind of basic, but it's also pretty decent, especially when I added the poblano salsa on it. The portion on that is a little smaller than I would realistically like. So I have that. That'll be my lunch today and tomorrow. After that, I have 4 peanut butter and jelly sandwiches left. I could do 2 of those for a lunch, maybe pair it with some celery or something like that, because I do still have a little bit of that left. And then I have my leftover vegetable soup, which I still have 1 full container of. Oh yeah, so as far as lunches go, I also have bread, I have bologna, I have 1 ounce of cheese left. So I could make bologna sandwiches, but I don't have anything to go with them. Same thing with a grilled cheese sandwich. I don't really have anything to go with that. But I could have those along with the vegetable soup to get maybe 1 extra meal out of that. If I have 2 bologna sandwiches and 1 grilled cheese sandwich, then I can get 3 servings out of that container of soup. But where we run into complications is when we get to dinner time. So I have the Alfredo pasta, which is thawed in my fridge. That will be my dinner tonight, and hopefully that reheats well. I have the pork chops that I bought, which I could repeat those with some baked potatoes. I don't have any more green beans to have with those, so it would just be pork chops and potatoes. I could even do something a little bit different with that and potentially cut the pork chops up into small pieces. I still have a little bit of that pork tenderloin that I made. I thought about doing that as a topping for a baked potato as well. I don't have any rice. I don't have any pasta. I don't have any other bases beyond bread and potatoes at this point. I can continue for the next 5 days after today, and we can see what those meals would look like under the impression that they're gonna be kind of boring. But I will let you guys make that judgment call. Because I have had a lot of requests to continue this for a second month. And I do wonder what that would look like, because now I have certain things like barbecue sauce, I have salsa, I have a few things on hand from this month that I could roll over into next month, even potatoes and things like that. And so these are my three options I am presenting to you guys on day 25. Do we continue this until the 30th day and just see how far it can go, even if the meals are boring? Or do we spend an extra $5 to $10 to be able to get a little bit more nutrition in the meals, a little bit more substantial meals? And then the third option is whether we start anew with a new 30 days using the ingredients that I currently have and seeing, even just having a little bit of things in your fridge, in your freezer, in your pantry, how much of a difference that could make. I have really enjoyed this series. It is a lot, and that's why sometimes the videos are a little delayed coming out, because filming breakfast, lunch, and dinner every single day, plus trying to schedule in time to sit down and edit that, it's a lot of work, but I enjoy it and I don't mind putting it in. I'm curious to know what you guys think about everything so far. Want your insight on what you would like to see moving forward. I hope you guys are having a fantastic day, and I will see you again soon.